5 years ago, 29-year-old David's life took an unexpected turn when his girlfriend Emma disappeared without a trace. David and Emma had been together since their senior year of high school, their relationship spanning almost 6 years, including the entirety of their college days. Despite the long-distance challenges, they managed to keep their love alive, meeting once or twice a month. Their relationship seemed perfect, at least in David's mind. On the eve of his 24th birthday, David planned to propose to Emma, surrounded by friends and family. However, the night before the big day, Emma vanished. She had mentioned being late for work, but she never returned. David's countless calls and texts went unanswered, and his attempts to contact her friends and family were futile. They had all blocked him. The following days were filled with confusion and despair as David searched for Emma. He considered filing a missing person report but decided against it, realizing she wasn't missing. She simply didn't want to be found by him. David created fake social media accounts to try and track her down, but Emma had either deleted her accounts or was using a different name. Despite his efforts, she remained untraceable. David was left with no choice but to give up the search, emotionally exhausted. He couldn't understand why Emma, who had always seemed happy with him, would disappear without a word. For years he clung to the hope that she might return or at least provide an explanation. Despite his friend's advice to move on, David found himself unable to connect with other women, constantly haunted by memories of Emma. 3 years ago, David started therapy, which helped him cope with his feelings and the situation. Although he appeared to have moved on, he never forgot about Emma. His hope for closure kept him from fully embracing life again. Then, 2 weeks ago, a conversation he overheard changed everything. David was visiting his mother, who was seriously ill, when he overheard a conversation between his brother Jack and their mother. Jack had moved to Canada for work when he was 22 and only visited twice a year. This time, he had stayed longer due to their mother's health. David and Jack had never been particularly close, mainly due to the distance, but they maintained a cordial relationship. David had stopped by his mother's house to drop off some soup for his father. He let himself in with a spare key and was about to enter his mother's room when he froze at the doorway. He heard his mother asking Jack when he was planning to bring her and the kids down for a visit, as she wanted to see them before she became too sick to travel. Jack replied that it was risky to bring them down without alerting David, which was why they hadn't come yet. The mention of her and the kids and the need to avoid David made him certain they were talking about Emma. David quietly left the house and returned home, his mind reeling. He logged into one of his fake social media accounts to investigate. This time, he searched for Jack instead of Emma. To his surprise, he found Jack's public Instagram account, which he had never seen before. Scrolling through Jack's photos, David saw several images of Jack with Emma and a child who looked strikingly like her, but had Jack's eyes. David was devastated. It became clear that his family had known about Emma's whereabouts all along and had helped Jack cover it up. The betrayal cut deep. His own family had been gaslighting him for years. David felt sick, thinking about all the times his parents had comforted him, knowing they were hiding the truth. Jack had stolen the life David had envisioned for himself, and his family had helped cover it up. David was filled with disgust and rage. He wanted to cut them all out of his life, but first, he decided to confront them. David sent a message to his family and Emma, expressing his knowledge of their betrayal and demanding to know why they had done this to him. He received no immediate response and spent the next few days in a haze, struggling to come to terms with the enormity of the betrayal. Finally, Emma responded, but instead of an explanation, she told him he was being inappropriate and that he should move on, as she had done. Emma's response added insult to injury. She accused David of being the problem and suggested he get himself checked out. Her words stung, and David was left feeling more lost than ever. He decided to cut off all contact with his family and focus on moving forward, determined to rebuild his life without the people who had betrayed him. David's confrontation with the truth was a painful awakening. He had always believed that his family would stand by him through thick and thin. The revelation that they had been complicit in Emma's disappearance and Jack's betrayal shattered this belief. The emotional turmoil was overwhelming, but David knew he needed to take action to regain control of his life. In the days following Emma's response, David struggled to find clarity. He avoided his family's attempts to contact him, ignoring their calls and messages. He couldn't bear to hear their excuses or explanations. The trust he once had in them was irreparably broken. David turned to his therapist for support, hoping to navigate the complex emotions swirling within him. During a therapy session, David expressed his anger and hurt. His therapist encouraged him to focus on his healing and to consider what he needed to move forward. David realized that he couldn't continue living in the shadow of his past. He needed to confront his family, not for their sake, but for his peace of mind. David decided to visit his mother while Jack and his father were out. He needed to hear her side of the story, and more importantly, he needed to set boundaries. When he arrived, his mother greeted him with tears and apologies. She confessed that she and his father had known about the affair for years. They had discovered Emma and Jack together during one of Jack's visits and had chosen to keep it a secret, believing they were protecting David. David listened in stunned silence as his mother detailed their elaborate efforts to hide the truth. They had even gone so far as to warn friends and family not to mention Emma's whereabouts. The lengths they had gone to deceive him were staggering. His mother's tears and apologies felt hollow, and David's anger grew with each word. When his mother finished, David took a deep breath and made a decision. He demanded that his parents change their wills to leave the majority of their assets to him. He didn't want their money, but he wanted to ensure that Jack would suffer for his betrayal. His mother was reluctant, but David's resolve was unyielding. She finally agreed, and they arranged for the family lawyer to visit and make the changes. David left his mother's house feeling a mix of vindication and emptiness. He had taken a step toward reclaiming control, but the victory felt hollow. The betrayal of his family weighed heavily on his heart. David knew that he needed to continue therapy and focus on rebuilding his life. In the following days, David met with the lawyer and witnessed the changes to the wills. His parents' assets would mostly go to him, leaving Jack with little. David felt a sense of grim satisfaction, knowing that his brother would experience a fraction of the pain he had caused. It was a small comfort, but it was a start. David continued to avoid contact with his family, focusing on his healing. He reached out to old friends, rekindling relationships that had been neglected. He found solace in their support and began to feel a glimmer of hope for the future. The road ahead was long, but David was determined to reclaim his life and find happiness again. David's journey to healing was far from easy. Each day presented new challenges as he grappled with the depth of his family's betrayal and the loss of the future he had envisioned with Emma. His therapy sessions became a lifeline, offering him a safe space to explore his feelings and develop strategies to move forward. One evening, while scrolling through social media, David stumbled upon a post from an old friend, Mike, who had moved to another city. Mike had always been a source of positivity and had a knack for lifting David's spirits. On a whim, David decided to reach out. He sent Mike a message, briefly explaining what had happened and expressing his need for a change of scenery. Mike responded almost immediately, offering David a place to stay and a chance to get away from the painful memories. Grateful for the opportunity, David packed his bags and left for the city where Mike lived. The change of environment was refreshing, and being around a supportive friend helped David begin to see a future beyond his current pain. During his stay with Mike, David started to rediscover old hobbies that he had abandoned during his years of emotional turmoil. He began writing again, pouring his thoughts and feelings into a journal. Writing became a therapeutic outlet, helping him process his emotions and gain clarity. One afternoon, while at a coffee shop, David met a woman named Sarah. She was friendly and engaging, and they struck up a conversation. Sarah was a therapist who specialized in helping people navigate complex emotional issues. Intrigued by David's story, she offered him some informal advice, encouraging him to continue seeking therapy and to focus on building a new life for himself. Their conversations became a regular part of David's routine, and he found himself looking forward to their meetings. Sarah's insights were invaluable, and her perspective helped David see his situation in a new light. She encouraged him to consider forgiveness, not for his family's sake, but for his peace of mind. Inspired by Sarah's words, David decided to take a more active role in his healing. He began meditating and practicing mindfulness, which helped him stay grounded and present. He also started volunteering at a local community center, finding purpose in helping others. As the weeks passed, David's sense of self-worth began to rebuild. He started to see himself not as a victim of betrayal, but as a survivor who had the strength to overcome his past. His friendship with Mike and his interactions with Sarah played a crucial role in this transformation. One day, while at the community center, David overheard a conversation about a support group for people who had experienced betrayal and loss. Intrigued, he decided to attend a meeting. The group was small but welcoming, and hearing others share their stories was both heartbreaking and inspiring. David realized he was not alone in his pain, and this sense of community gave him further strength to heal. During one of the support group meetings, David shared his story for the first time in a public setting. It was a cathartic experience, and the group's empathy and understanding helped him feel validated. For the first time, David felt a sense of closure beginning to form. As he continued to attend the support group, David's confidence grew. He started to explore new opportunities, including a potential job in the city where Mike lived. The idea of a fresh start in a new place became increasingly appealing, and David began to make plans for the future. Despite the progress he was making, David knew he still had unresolved issues with his family. The betrayal he had experienced was a heavy burden, and he couldn't fully move on without addressing it. Encouraged by Sarah and his support group, David decided it was time to have a final conversation with his parents and Jack. He returned home with a newfound sense of purpose, ready to confront his family one last time. David knew this conversation wouldn't be easy, but it was necessary for his healing. He arranged to meet them at his parents' house, determined to express his feelings and set boundaries. The day of the meeting arrived, and David felt a mix of anxiety and resolve. As he walked into his parents' house, memories of happier times flooded his mind, but he pushed them aside. This was about finding closure and reclaiming his life. David's parents and Jack were already seated in the living room when he arrived. The tension was palpable, and David took a deep breath before speaking. He began by recounting the events of the past 5 years from his perspective, emphasizing the pain and betrayal he had felt. His voice was steady, but the emotion behind his words was undeniable. When he finished, there was a heavy silence in the room. His parents looked remorseful, while Jack seemed conflicted. David's father was the first to speak, apologizing for their actions and acknowledging the hurt they had caused. His mother echoed the apology, tears streaming down her face. Jack, however, remained silent for a moment longer. When he finally spoke, he expressed regret, but also defended his actions, claiming he and Emma had been genuinely in love. David listened, his heart heavy, but he stood firm. He made it clear that while he understood their feelings, their deceit had destroyed his trust. David concluded the conversation by stating his boundaries. He needed time and space to heal, and he wasn't ready to forgive them yet. He asked for their understanding and support as he continued his journey toward recovery. His parents nodded, their expressions a mix of sorrow and acceptance. Jack said nothing, but his silence spoke volumes. Leaving his parents' house that day, David felt a weight lift off his shoulders. The confrontation had been difficult, but it was a necessary step toward healing. He knew the road ahead would still have challenges, but he was ready to face them with a renewed sense of strength and determination. David's confrontation with his family marked a turning point in his journey. With a sense of closure beginning to take shape, he felt more empowered than ever to forge a new path. The emotional intensity of the meeting had left him exhausted, but also strangely liberated. For the first time in years, he felt like he was no longer a prisoner of his past. Returning to the city where Mike lived, David threw himself into his new life with renewed vigor. He accepted a job at a local nonprofit organization where he could channel his energy into meaningful work. The position allowed him to help others while also helping himself heal, and he quickly became an integral part of the team. David's friendship with Sarah deepened as well. Their conversations evolved from casual chats to more profound discussions about life, healing, and personal growth. Sarah's wisdom and empathy were invaluable, and David found himself looking forward to their meetings. She encouraged him to continue exploring his passions and to take steps toward building a future that brought him joy and fulfillment. One evening, Sarah invited David to a community event she was organizing. The event aimed to bring people together to share their stories and support one another. David was initially hesitant, but Sarah's enthusiasm was infectious and he agreed to attend. The event was held in a cozy, welcoming space filled with people from various walks of life. As David mingled and listened to others share their experiences, he felt a sense of belonging. It was a reminder that everyone carried their burdens and that healing was possible through connection and community. When it was David's turn to speak, he felt a mixture of nerves and excitement. He shared his story openly, recounting the pain of Emma's disappearance, the betrayal of his family, and his journey toward healing. The audience's response was overwhelmingly supportive, and David felt a profound sense of relief and validation. After the event, Sarah approached David with a smile. "You did great," she said, her eyes shining with pride. "Your story is powerful, and it can help others heal too." David thanked her, feeling a warmth he hadn't experienced in a long time. As they walked together, Sarah suggested they grab a coffee and continue their conversation. Over steaming mugs of coffee, they talked about their hopes and dreams, and David realized he was beginning to feel something more than friendship for Sarah. The days that followed were filled with new beginnings. David and Sarah started spending more time together, their connection deepening with each passing day. They went on long walks, explored new places, and shared their thoughts and feelings. It was a slow, gentle process, but David felt his heart beginning to open again. One weekend, Mike invited David and Sarah to join him and a few friends for a hiking trip. The idea of immersing himself in nature and spending time with good company appealed to David, and he eagerly accepted. The hike was challenging but invigorating, and David found solace in the beauty of the outdoors and the camaraderie of his friends. As they reached the summit, David took a moment to breathe in the fresh air and reflect on his journey. He felt a sense of accomplishment and gratitude for the people who had supported him along the way. Looking out over the vast landscape, he realized how far he had come and how much potential the future held. That evening, around a campfire, Mike shared stories of their high school days, bringing back memories that made David laugh and reminisce. Sarah sat beside him, her presence a comforting reminder of how much his life had changed for the better. As the fire crackled and the stars twinkled overhead, David felt a sense of peace and contentment. The following week, David received a surprising phone call from his father. His mother's health had taken a turn for the worse, and his father asked if David could visit. Despite the strained relationship, David agreed, knowing he needed to see his mother and find some resolution. Arriving at his parents' home, David was greeted by a somber atmosphere. His mother was bedridden, her once vibrant spirit dimmed by illness. Sitting by her bedside, David felt a surge of emotions, anger, sadness, and a lingering sense of betrayal. But as his mother reached out to hold his hand, he also felt a deep compassion. "David, I'm so sorry for everything," she whispered, her voice weak but sincere. "I wish I could go back and change things. Please, can you forgive me?" David took a deep breath, his heart heavy with the weight of her words. Forgiveness had been a distant concept, something he struggled to grasp. But seeing his mother in her vulnerable state, he realized that holding on to anger would only continue to hurt him. "Mom, I don't know if I can ever fully forgive, but I can try to let go of the anger," David replied softly. "I want to move forward and find peace, for both of us." His mother nodded, tears in her eyes, and they sat in silence, holding hands. It was a small step, but it felt significant. David knew that healing was a process, and this moment was part of that journey. Over the next few days, David spent time with his mother, reminiscing about happier times and sharing stories. It was a bittersweet experience, but it brought a sense of closure that he hadn't expected. He realized that while the past couldn't be changed, the future was still within his control. David returned to the city with a renewed sense of purpose. He continued to build his life, focusing on his work, his friendships, and his budding relationship with Sarah. Each day brought new challenges and triumphs, and David embraced them with an open heart. As the months passed, David's relationship with Sarah blossomed into something beautiful. They supported each other through their respective journeys, growing closer with each passing day. David felt a sense of hope and joy that he hadn't experienced in years. One evening, as they watched the sunset together, Sarah turned to David with a thoughtful expression. "You know, David, I think you found your way through the darkness. You've come out stronger and more resilient." David smiled, feeling the truth in her words. "I couldn't have done it without you, Sarah. You've been my guiding light." Sarah squeezed his hand, and they sat in comfortable silence, the future stretching out before them like an uncharted adventure. David knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, he was ready to face them with courage and an open heart. David's journey of healing and self-discovery continued to unfold in surprising and rewarding ways. As he navigated the complexities of his emotions and relationships, he found strength in the support system he had built. His work at the nonprofit organization flourished, and he took on new projects that brought a sense of purpose and fulfillment. One afternoon, while organizing a community outreach event, David received an unexpected phone call from his brother, Jack. The sound of Jack's voice instantly brought back a flood of memories and emotions. David hesitated but decided to answer, knowing that avoiding the conversation would only prolong his healing process. "David, I know this is probably the last thing you want, but I need to talk to you," Jack began, his tone uncharacteristically somber. "I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I realize how much I've hurt you. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want to try to make things right." David took a deep breath, feeling a mix of anger and curiosity. "Go on," he replied, his voice steady but guarded. Jack explained that he had been seeing a therapist to deal with his issues and had come to understand the depth of his betrayal. He expressed genuine remorse and a desire to rebuild their relationship if possible. He also mentioned that their mother had been urging him to reach out and try to mend the rift between them. Listening to Jack, David felt a complicated mix of emotions. Part of him wanted to lash out and reject the olive branch, but another part recognized the importance of healing and reconciliation, not just for himself, but for his family. David agreed to meet Jack for a coffee, setting clear boundaries for the conversation. The meeting was tense but necessary. Jack apologized sincerely, acknowledging the pain he had caused and the trust he had shattered. David listened, his heart heavy with conflicting feelings. While the apology didn't erase the past, it was a step towards understanding and potential healing. "Jack, I appreciate your apology, but it will take time for me to trust you again," David said, his voice calm but firm. "I'm willing to try, but only if you're truly committed to making amends." Jack nodded, tears in his eyes. "I understand, David. I'll do whatever it takes to earn your trust back." The conversation marked a tentative beginning to a long and challenging process of rebuilding their relationship. David knew that trust wouldn't be restored overnight, but he was willing to take small steps towards reconciliation. It was a decision rooted in his desire to move forward and not let the past define his future. As weeks turned into months, David and Jack continued to meet regularly, slowly rebuilding their bond. Their conversations were honest and often painful, but they were necessary for healing. David set firm boundaries, making it clear that their relationship would be rebuilt on his terms. Meanwhile, David's relationship with Sarah deepened. She became his confidant, offering unwavering support and understanding. They spent more time together, sharing their dreams and plans for the future. Sarah's presence brought a sense of stability and joy to David's life, and he began to envision a future with her by his side. One weekend, David and Sarah decided to take a trip to a nearby coastal town. The serene beauty of the ocean and the peaceful atmosphere provided a perfect backdrop for reflection and relaxation. They walked along the beach, hand in hand, talking about everything and nothing. As the sun set, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, David felt a sense of peace wash over him. He turned to Sarah, gratitude and love shining in his eyes. "Sarah, these past months with you have been incredible. You've helped me heal in ways I never thought possible." Sarah smiled, her eyes reflecting the sunset's warmth. "You've come so far, David. I'm proud of you." David took her hand and held it tightly. "I don't know what the future holds, but I know I want to face it with you." Tears glistened in Sarah's eyes as she hugged David. "I feel the same way." Their relationship continued to grow, and David found himself experiencing happiness and contentment he had once thought impossible. He began to make plans for the future, both professionally and personally. His work at the nonprofit thrived, and he considered furthering his education to expand his impact. At home, David reconnected with old friends and built new relationships. He found joy in simple pleasures and started to envision a life filled with possibility and hope. The scars of the past were still there, but they no longer defined him. Instead, they served as reminders of his resilience and strength. David's relationship with his family remained complicated. While his bond with Jack was slowly mending, his relationship with his parents was still strained. He continued to visit his mother, whose health fluctuated, and maintained a cordial but distant relationship with his father. One day, during a visit to his parents' house, David found his father in the garden, tending to his beloved rose bushes. They had a quiet but meaningful conversation, addressing some of the lingering issues between them. David's father expressed regret for his actions and acknowledged the pain he had caused. "David, I've made many mistakes, and I know I can't undo them," his father said, his voice filled with sorrow. "But I hope we can find a way to move forward." David nodded, feeling a sense of closure. "It's going to take time, Dad, but I'm willing to try." The conversation was a small step towards healing, and David left feeling lighter. He knew that reconciliation was a process, and he was committed to taking it one day at a time. As the seasons changed, David's life continued to evolve. He and Sarah grew closer, their bond deepening with each passing day. They shared their dreams and supported each other through challenges, building a relationship based on trust and mutual respect. David also continued to thrive in his professional life, finding fulfillment in his work and exploring new opportunities. He felt a renewed sense of purpose and direction, confident in his ability to overcome any obstacles that came his way. The journey had been long and arduous, but David emerged stronger and more resilient. He had faced betrayal, loss, and heartbreak, but he had also discovered the power of forgiveness, love, and self-discovery. His future was filled with promise, and he was ready to embrace it with an open heart. David's life had transformed in ways he never thought possible. He had moved from a place of deep betrayal and heartache to one of growth, healing, and new beginnings. As he reflected on his journey, he felt a profound sense of gratitude for the people and experiences that had shaped his path. One bright spring morning, David decided to take a walk through the park near his home. The flowers were in full bloom, and the air was filled with the sweet scent of new life. As he strolled along the winding paths, he thought about how far he had come since Emma's disappearance. The pain and confusion had given way to clarity and purpose, and he felt more at peace with himself than ever before. His relationship with Sarah continued to flourish. They spent their days exploring new places, sharing their thoughts and dreams, and supporting each other through life's ups and downs. Sarah's compassion and understanding had been a cornerstone of David's healing, and he felt incredibly lucky to have her by his side. One evening, as they sat on Sarah's porch watching the sunset, David felt a surge of emotion. He turned to Sarah, his heart full of love and gratitude. "Sarah, I can't imagine my life without you. You've been my rock, my confidant, and my best friend. I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Sarah's eyes filled with tears of joy. "David, I feel the same way. You've brought so much happiness and love into my life. I can't wait to see what the future holds for us." With that, David reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a beautiful ring, simple yet elegant, a symbol of their journey and the love they shared. "Sarah, will you marry me?" Sarah's face lit up with a radiant smile. "Yes, David, of course, I'll marry you." They embraced, their hearts full of joy and anticipation for the future. The proposal marked the beginning of a new chapter in their lives, one filled with love, hope, and endless possibilities. In the weeks that followed, David and Sarah began planning their wedding. They decided on a small, intimate ceremony surrounded by close friends and family. The preparations brought them even closer, and they reveled in the excitement of building a life together. David also continued to nurture his relationships with his family. While the road to reconciliation was still long, there were signs of progress. His visits to his mother became more frequent, and their conversations were filled with genuine attempts to understand and heal the past. His father, too, made efforts to rebuild their bond, and David appreciated the small steps they were taking towards mending their relationship. One day, while visiting his parents, David's father pulled him aside. "David, I want you to know how proud I am of the man you've become. Despite everything that's happened, you've shown incredible strength and grace. I'm truly sorry for the pain we've caused you." David felt a lump in his throat as he nodded. "Thank you, Dad. I appreciate it. We're all trying to move forward, and that's what matters." As the wedding day approached, David found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought him to this moment. The pain and betrayal of the past had been a crucible, forging him into a stronger, more resilient person. He had learned the power of forgiveness, the importance of self-love, and the beauty of new beginnings. The day of the wedding was perfect. The sun shone brightly, casting a warm glow over the outdoor venue. David and Sarah exchanged vows under a canopy of blooming flowers, their words filled with love and commitment. Their friends and family looked on with smiles and tears, sharing in the joy of the moment. After the ceremony, as they danced under the stars, David felt a deep sense of contentment. The past no longer held power over him. It had become a part of his story, but not the defining chapter. He was ready to embrace the future with an open heart, alongside the woman he loved. In the months that followed, David and Sarah settled into their new life together. They moved into a cozy home filled with light and laughter. David continued his work at the nonprofit, finding fulfillment in helping others. Sarah, too, thrived in her career, and they supported each other's dreams and aspirations. David's relationship with Jack also continued to improve. They found common ground and began to rebuild their bond, one step at a time. It wasn't always easy, but both were committed to the process. Their efforts were a testament to the power of forgiveness and the possibility of second chances. One evening, as David and Sarah sat on their porch watching the sunset, they talked about their future. They dreamed of traveling the world, starting a family, and continuing to grow together. The horizon was filled with endless possibilities, and they were ready to embrace each one. David thought about the journey that had brought him to this moment, the pain, the betrayal, the healing, and the love. It had been a long and difficult road, but it had also been a journey of self-discovery and growth. He had learned that even in the darkest times, there was always a glimmer of hope. As he held Sarah's hand, David felt a deep sense of gratitude. He was surrounded by love, supported by friends and family, and filled with a sense of purpose and direction. The future was bright, and he was ready to face it with courage and an open heart. David's story was one of resilience and transformation. He had faced incredible challenges and emerged stronger, ready to embrace the beauty and promise of each new day. The past was a part of him, but it no longer defined him. He had found his way through the darkness and into the light, and he knew that whatever the future held, he was ready to face it with love and hope. David's journey had come full circle, from the depths of betrayal and despair to the heights of love and fulfillment. It was a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the power of forgiveness and self-discovery. As he looked towards the future, David knew that he was not alone. He had found his way back to himself, and he was ready to embrace the adventure that lay ahead. with Sarah by his side and an open heart full of love and hope.